this in the past, but I don't think Clifford is or was the biggest issue here on the organizational priority list. The roster was just poorly constructed. They've made some trades, obviously, at the deadline, and the team has played better, albeit the record's still what it is. But I do think if you can find the right coach this offseason, you go ahead and make that change. I haven't really done a ton of research into potential coaches that are out there. And the one thing that I keep debating on is I'm not sure if the Hornets would be better off going after an established guy with more experience, a guy that's been in the league. Now, obviously, if you go after a guy like that, he may not be one that's willing to adjust. He may not be a guy that's like willing to try new things. He's kind of like stuck in his ways at that point, but at least he's a known commodity. Or do you go for like a young, energetic guy, maybe a guy like Charles Lee, who is currently with the Boston Celtics? He was with the Bucks before, and actually he has ties to Rick Schnall back in Atlanta for several years when he was assistant there. So that's the one thing I don't know. Like, I don't have a good like grasp on where the Hornets should go if they were to find the right head coach. So those are my thoughts. It's not my top priority, but I do think it's something that obviously the Hornets will look into.
Yeah, I think I think Cliff's done okay with like being dealt a pretty tough hand.
Right.
I think the connections with he and Jeff Peterson are like a little interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But if Charlotte is going to make a change at coach this offseason, and like if it got to the point too where they were like, we're going to bring Cliff back, we want like one more season, especially like because like they're not winning next year, whatever. If they want to give Cliff one more year, like I wouldn't vote for that, but I wouldn't like be totally up in arms. I do think if you're going to like go the reset route, it does make sense to get someone in here that is sort of with you from the jump as you're sort of like building, as you're sort of like laying the foundation. So Jamal Mosley in Orlando, Mark Dagnall in Oklahoma City. I mean, these are like best case scenarios. Those guys are awesome coaches. And yes, obviously, if you could just like push button, get one of those guys, and along with all of the high draft picks they get to coach, you would obviously do that. But I think those guys have both done a very nice job in their respective franchises. Charles Lee is an awesome name. I think people that are coming out of the Celtics organization are ones you've got to, I think, really consider, just given like how successful, not just how successful, but how like creative that franchise has been. And should also say, you guys, Charles Lee was a long time ago when I was a little kid. When Charles Lee was playing at Bucknell, he came down and was a counselor at Wake Forest basketball camp, and he was my coach at Wake Forest basketball camp many summers ago when he was a very good college player at Bucknell. So I'm excited for him to get a head coaching job in the NBA, which is going to happen sooner rather than later, whether it's in Charlotte or not. So
You think he'll thank you for like being such a good basketball player as a counselor?
Yeah. Well, it was cool because like he and Chris Paul and Justin Gray, who's the head coach at Coastal Carolina now, very young head coach at Coastal Carolina, just got hired there. Those guys would have like late night shooting sessions because they were all counselors at the camp. So when stuff was done, they'd go back into the gym and play hoops. So yeah, I don't know. It's gonna be cool to see him when he gets an actual gig. So my vote would be for like younger coach.
Okay.
And sort of like start laying with like a thoughtful mind about either offense or defense, and then get that guy in here, get that relationship started with LaMelo, with Brandon Miller, with Mark Williams, that type of stuff, and then go from there.
Yeah, the coaching situation is very, very interesting. You guys have mentioned the Clifford's ties with Peterson going back to the Brooklyn days, and I really don't have a good feel for what's going to happen here. I definitely think Clifford is being evaluated like the rest of the roster right now. It really boils down to how aggressive Peterson wants to be on the reset, not of the roster, but really of, I guess, the culture, for the lack of better terms here. And I don't know that he's going to do that this summer. They might give Clifford one more year, just for not having a good feel if he's not the right guy. to do this. I mean, you can always go the cheaper route and hire an offensive coordinator, for the lack of better terms, right? And let Clifford kind of drive the ship, but delegate more responsibility to see younger, more creative, maybe philosophies, especially when it comes to the offensive end. So I don't know if that's priority number one. To me, it's really not. I think priority number one is still filling out this roster. This is not a full reset. Like, this is a team that, with health next year, LaMelo taking a step, Brandon Miller taking a step second year, like, it's not inconceivable this team can win around 40 games. So, this is not a full reset. I do expect it appears as if the Hornets will operate as a team above the cap. So, will they use their full mid-level exception? I think they need a wing, and I think they need more depth on the front court. There's no real way to evaluate whether Mark Williams can even come close to playing like 50 to 60 games next year. And Nick Richards has obviously carried a really heavy load since Williams has been out, with little depth behind that. So, addressing that's going to be really important. And then again, just like a veteran physical wing, almost in like the 3-and-D archetype, I would say, to lift this defense a little bit. Funny enough, and we've already talked about it, I'm not sure really the Hornets do anything in free agency in the backcourt. I mean, they're just deep there. Like, I don't really know, health is an issue, obviously, but I don't know how else to say it. I think that would be kind of a waste of assets. So yeah, that's kind of what I expect. And I do think that getting this roster in a healthy place where you actually can have like 10 to 11 healthy NBA caliber players available night to night is important, because the back end of this roster, as we're well aware, has kind of been a joke this season. And I think that, obviously that was a Mitch Kupchak led front office, but like, we can't just turn our nose up at spending a little money and adding some depth. To me, that's the most important thing this offseason, because I don't think this roster is that far away from competing.